Thailand's Sirin Patinotai ended up in Beijing at the age of 8 is a story in itself. Quite apart from the struggle she then faced to try to survive the political turmoil which engulfed China.
At the time in the early 50s, I think China was a very, very dangerous word to pronounce in Thailand. Then it represented horror and illegal and, you know.
It's hard to put myself in my mother's shoes, and for me it's very difficult to fathom what it must have been like to be sent away from the family and to grow up in very different surroundings.
It was certainly a radical change for a young girl plucked out of Bangkok in the 1950s. Sirin was born to one of Thailand's leading political families. Her father, Sang Patinotai, was a chief advisor to the Prime Minister of the day. Both men shared deep concerns about China's emerging power and the need to forge ties with Beijing, even though it was illegal to do so.
Believes that China would have to open to the world and that China would become a force to reckon with on the international stage.
Covert contact was made through diplomatic channels with Premier Zhou Enlai, the second most powerful man in China after Chairman Mao Zedong. A secret treaty of friendship was drawn up, but Sirin's father wanted to make a more tangible sign of goodwill. He decided to send Sirin and her older brother, Envoy, to China to be raised by Zhou Enlai, a human pledge of friendship more in keeping with medieval practices.
One of the Chinese tradition to pay homage, to show trust to the other nation. At the time, I think there was no any other possibility to establish the kind of link with China.
Basically to grow up and learn the ways of the grander and greater kingdom.
I think the hardest thing is how he managed to convince my grandmother. Honey, you know, we're going to send 2 of our kids to China. It's like the equivalent of saying, you know, we're going to send our kids to North Korea or to Burma, you know, for a couple of years, you know, not long.
Sirin gave little thought to the destination. She was simply excited about the journey she was to undertake.
I would have been the first girl in my class to get on the plane there and come back, and I just thought I would cut a very nice figure among my friends. I thought I would go for a nice holiday for a week or so, and so we didn't say goodbye to any friends or school, or we just left.
Sirin was disturbed by what she found in Beijing, a poverty-stricken city in the first stages of communist reconstruction efforts. Premier Zhou Enlai assured her and her brother that they would be well cared for. Sirin still believed that she and Envoy would soon be heading home. But the short adventure was to turn into a 13-year stay during the most turbulent years of Chairman Mao's rule. Sirin, like so many others, was caught up in the Cultural Revolution, vilified and persecuted by a rampaging Red Guard.
I think the country was in such a turmoil, you know, and the change was so fast. I think even Zhou Enlai himself could not have foreseen it.
Terror gripped the nation as purge upon purge was unleashed against perceived enemies of the state, especially intellectuals and the privileged. The fading political slogans which once generated the violence can still be found daubed on the walls of alleyways in the back streets of Beijing. Sirin and her brother, now teenagers, were targeted as part of the privileged classes. Their guardian, Zhou Enlai, had his own problems.
He himself was in great trouble.
As Zhou Enlai battled for his political life, Sirin was not only forced to confess to capitalist crimes against the state, but was made to denounce her brother as a counter-revolutionary.
I read and my brother was sitting next to me. And then after I finished reading, the Red Guard came in reading the sentence, and the soldiers came in and dragged him away, and I just fainted.
Wan Wai was expelled from China, but the saga was just beginning for Sirin. Next, she was forced to denounce her father on Radio Peking.
The thing was, I couldn't forgive myself. I was in a big mess for many years because I had to try to understand myself. I had to blame somebody, so I blamed my father, why he ever wanted to send a little girl to China.
To escape persecution in Beijing, Sirin, with Zhou Enlai's help, changed her name and went to work with the People's Liberation Army in the countryside.
Oh, it was very frightening. I think so frightening that I lost my memory for 3 years. From the time when I was sent to the countryside, the situation there must have been very, very harsh. I was probably close to death somewhere, and Zhou Enlai sent somebody again to see me and brought me back to Beijing and put me in a hospital. And then again I had to run somewhere, so he put me into a factory. So I was a textile worker for over a year.
I think that would have been really awful to almost overnight go from a situation of being in the privileged care of the state to being very much left to your own devices with no protection and no certainty about what would happen the next day.
Leo was about 8 months, I think, and he was on top of on his shoulder.
Sirin's son, Leo Horn, is soon to marry an Australian girl, Libet Lochnan from Geelong, who is trying to absorb the remarkable family story.
Just don't feel that I comprehend it very well at all, because it's just very, very unique.
Neither Leo nor his older brother Joe know the full extent of the suffering their mother endured during the tumult.
I think the Cultural Revolution years must have been very, very tough. You know, we never talk about it, she never talks about it.
It was only after Sirin met a British university student in Beijing who promised to help her to get out that her world began to change. Premier Zhou Enlai, who had weathered the worst of the political storm, urged her to leave as soon as possible.
When I said to him I wanted to go to England, he said, just leave. Never mind whether you like this man or not, just go. And that was the time when he made me a travel document to the British government. And because I had no passport, nothing, I was stateless.
Sirin was married within a week of arriving in Britain, proclaiming that she was an orphan, believing that she would be forever distanced from the family she had denounced.
From my point of view, I didn't dare contacting the family. I was all in the wrong. So I was ashamed. I would not have the courage to contact them. You know, my mother thought I died. Everybody thought I was dead.
But word filtered back to Bangkok from China that Sirin may have escaped to Europe. Exhaustive efforts were made by the family to try to trace her.
Father made 2 trips to England, to London. Couldn't get me.
It took 5 years to find her.
Fantastic moment, because my parents called me, and that was the first time I realized that, you know, we are a great family. No blame or shame from the family. The family was looking, you know, forward to have me back and to be with me.
We're a political family, you know, people understand circumstances like this, and you know, there was this trust and understanding between them that, you know, everyone would understand what my mother's situation was and how she reacted.
Well, we just enough just to embrace each other. Very, very, very long. There was no tears, there was nothing. It was just happiness.
When I was very young, my mother took us, my brother and I took us back to Thailand to spend time with the family, and we actually lived in the family core with my grandfather, my mother's father and mother, and I think that was a very special time for my mother.
For the first time, Sirin was able to reconcile the lingering differences with her father.
And I said, why did you, send us there? He said, sending you away was like cutting a piece of flesh from my heart.
Sirin's marriage broke up, but she remains close to her two sons, who are now building their lives between Bangkok and Beijing. Incredibly, so is their mother. As ping-pong diplomacy was opening doors to the United States in the 1970s, Sirin summoned up the courage to return to the country she had fled in fear. She was fulfilling her father's dream, working as an envoy for Thailand to help build bridges to China. The circle was complete as she met China's foreign policy reformer, her former guardian, Premier Zhou Enlai.
All my thought, my thinking of today and my existence has a lot of influence by this great man, and I couldn't be more grateful. I think he was, in the end, my father, the father that I did not have.
Sirin harbours no regrets from the lost years of suffering alone behind the bamboo curtain. Quite to the contrary.
So I think I was fortunate in that, to see the beginning of a big change of a nation.
I guess the legacy lives on, but on an emotional level, there's very little that we talk about that period.
I absolutely think how extraordinary. Times like this, no one would ever contemplate similar diplomatic moves, and as my grandfather did back then, as my uncle and my mother undertook, in the 50s, at the heart of the Cold War.